There is a quiet lie that has spread across the modern world. It whispers through boardrooms and social media feeds, through self help slogans and misunderstood philosophy, through the rigid posture of people who have mistaken control for wisdom. The lie is simple: emotion is weakness. If you wish to be strong, you must conquer it, destroy it, suppress it, rise above it. You have heard it said, be rational, don't be emotional, control yourself. You're so dramatic. And so millions of people have begun waging war against one of the most powerful forces within the human mind. But here's the strange thing. The more fiercely people attempt to conquer emotion, the more secretly it governs their lives. Hidden resentment shapes decisions. Buried griefs become bitterness. Unacknowledged fear hardens into anger. Unfelt longing turns into addiction. The person who claims to have conquered emotion is often the person most completely ruled by it. Because emotion is not the enemy. Emotion is movement. What we call emotion is not weakness at all. It is energy. And if we misunderstand energy, we become its victim. If we understand energy, we can direct it. This is why this exploration matters. In this series, we are examining the movements of the mind, the fundamental processes through which perception unfolds. We began with sensation, direct contact with experience before interpretation. Then we examined thought, the organizing activity that names, compares, and assigns meaning. Now we arrive at the third movement, emotion. And before we step into the body of this inquiry, remember the orientation of this entire project. Because the path to clarity does not begin in abstraction. It begins in contact. Let us descend so that we may rise. If sensation is contact with experience, and thought is interpretation, then emotion is energetic tone. Emotion is the force that gives weight to perception. It is the current that animates thought. Without emotion, thought remains sterile. Without emotion, action never occurs. Emotion supplies the momentum of the psyche. Within the philosophy I call cognitive alchemy, emotion is understood as psychological energy, not irrational disturbance, not weakness. Energy. And like all energy, it obeys a simple law. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change form. Fire becomes heat. Heat becomes motion. Motion becomes light. The same is true within the psyche. Emotion cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. When people attempt to suppress emotion, they imagine they are eliminating it. But suppression does not dissolve energy. It only forces that energy deeper into the mind. And from there, it continues operation. Suppressed anger becomes passive aggression. Suppressed grief becomes numbness. Suppressed fear becomes control. Suppressed shame becomes arrogance. The emotional energy remains. It simply changes shape. Psychology has long observed this process. When emotional experience is denied conscious recognition, it does not disappear. It moves into the unconscious and begins influencing behavior indirectly. A person may believe they are acting rationally, but beneath the surface, unresolved emotional currents are quietly steering perception. This is why repression does not produce mastery. It produces distortion. And distortion produces unnecessary suffering. Here, we must establish something extremely important. Emotion itself has no agency. Emotion does not choose. Emotion does not decide. Emotion does not act. Emotion only moves. It is movement within consciousness. It is wind. But the will is the sailor. If the sailor sleeps, the wind drives the ship wherever it pleases. But if the sailor awakens, the very same wind becomes power. Emotion does not enslave us. Unconsciousness enslaves us. When sensation, thought, and emotion become fused together unconsciously, identity forms around them. A feeling arises. Thought interprets it. Identity fuses with the interpretation. This is why we say, I am angry. I am afraid. I am broken. But this is inaccurate. You are not the emotion. You are the awareness within which emotion appears. Emotion is movement inside consciousness. And movement may be directed. At this point, we encounter an ancient philosophical insight. This is the principle of polarity. Everything that exists has poles: heat and cold, light and dark, expansion, and contraction. These are not separate forces. They are degrees of the same phenomenon. Emotion operates according to the same law. Fear and courage arise from the same energy. Anger and determination share the same current. Grief and love spring from the same depth. Emotion is a spectrum. When people attempt to eliminate one pole of that spectrum, they weaken the entire system. The person who suppresses anger often suppresses courage. The person who suppresses grief suppresses love. The person who numbs pain numbs joy. Energy cannot be selectively destroyed. It can only be refined. The work of psychological development is therefore not suppression. It is polarization, conscious polarization, directing energy towards its higher expression. Anger becomes clarity. Fear becomes vigilance. Desire becomes devotion. Grief becomes depth. The energy remains, but its orientation changes. Many philosophical traditions recognized this truth, but in the modern world they are frequently misunderstood. Take Stoicism. Today, Stoicism is often presented as a philosophy of emotional suppression, a kind of psychological armor. But the Stoics themselves did not advocate this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice what he did not say. He did not say you must eliminate your emotion. He said you must govern your mind. Emotion may arise, but the interpretation of that emotion remains within our domain. The Stoic project was mastery of perception, not the extinction of feeling. Similar misunderstandings appear in modern interpretations of Buddhism. Many imagine enlightenment requires emotional detachment, as if wisdom means becoming emotionally neutral. But genuine non-attachment does not mean the absence of feeling. It means freedom from identification with feeling. Emotion can arise and pass through awareness without capture. The river flows, but the mountain does not move. The same misreadings appear in shallow interpretations of Taoist thought. Harmony within the Tao does not mean flattening the human heart. The Tao is a living movement. The principle of rhythm, storm and sunlight, growth and decay, stillness and intensity. Emotion belongs to the rhythm of life itself. To erase emotion would be to erase humanity. A story illustrates this beautifully. A Zen master once lost his closest friend. He was seen openly weeping. Another monk approached him and said, "Master, you should not cry like this. It reflects poorly on the monastery. It is not fitting for someone in your position." The master looked at him and replied, "I am grieving because I want to grieve." The master understood something the other monk did not. Balance is not achieved by suppressing the heart. Balance is achieved by being present with it. The emotion arose. It moved through him. And because he did not resist it, it would eventually dissolve. This is not weakness. It is psychological clarity. Within the framework of cognitive alchemy, emotion becomes one of the primary fuels of transformation. Every so-called negative emotion contains energy. Anger contains power. Fear contains alertness. Jealousy contains longing. Despair contains intensity. When misunderstood, these energies become destructive. But when understood, they become raw material. This is why the language of alchemy is useful. Alchemy described the transformation of base metals into gold. Psychological alchemy performs a similar process. We take dense, reactive, emotional energy and refine it into clarity, strength, and creative force. Consider anger. Most people experience anger as destructive, and it can be. But anger also contains tremendous energy. When guided by awareness, anger becomes the force that confronts injustice. The force that establishes boundaries. The force that breaks stagnation. Without that energy, courage too would disappear. Consider fear. Fear is often treated as weakness, but fear contains the energy of alertness. Fear heightens perception. It sharpens attention. It prepares the body for action. Unconscious fear paralyzes. Conscious fear becomes vigilance. And vigilance, when properly used, becomes wisdom. Consider grief. Grief feels unbearable because it grows from love. Where there is no love, there is no grief. To eliminate grief would require eliminating love itself. But grief also deepens perception. It expands compassion. It reveals the fragility and transience of existence. Grief refines the human heart, and it teaches us what really matters. Emotion, therefore, is not an obstacle to consciousness. It is one of its great instruments, but only when it is properly understood. This insight also appears within mystical Christian literature. In the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, there is a discussion often summarized as the idea that adultery is the root of all sin. This phrase is commonly misunderstood, but its deeper meaning emerges when we examine the word itself. The English word adultery traces back through Latin adulterare, meaning to corrupt, to mix with impurity, to falsify the integrity of something pure. In other words, adultery originally described inner corruption. The mixing of what should remain whole. Within the psychological context, this refers to fragmentation of the self. When sensation, thought, and emotion fall into conflict, the psyche becomes divided. And from that division arise envy, cruelty, resentment, greed. Not because emotion itself is evil, but because emotional energy has become disordered. What people often call evil is frequently nothing more than the weakness of a person who has never learned to harmonize their inner forces. The person ruled by emotion becomes destructive. But the person who understands emotion becomes powerful, whole. Emotion is energy, and energy wants to move. If resisted, it distorts. If suppressed, it mutates. But if observed carefully, it reveals its structure. And once that structure is understood, the will can direct it. The same current that fuels rage fuels courage. The same current that fuels despair fuels devotion. The same current that fuels obsession fuels creativity. Emotion becomes the servant of purpose rather than your master. When sensation, thought, and emotion begin to harmonize, perception reorganizes. Awareness stabilizes. Interpretation clarifies. Emotion refines. And the mind becomes capable of perceiving reality with far greater depth. This transformation does not happen through suppression. It happens through integration and harmonization. So we return to the lie with which we began. Emotion is not weakness. Emotion is power. Unconscious emotion enslaves us. Conscious emotion empowers us. Emotion is the wind that fills the sails of the mind. Ignored, it drives us into chaos. Understood, it carries us across oceans. If you have listened this far, I want to thank you. Not casually, but sincerely. Because what we are building here is not casual content. It is a structure of understanding. This series, The Movements of the Mind, forms only the foundation. We began with sensation, then thought, now emotion. These three movements form the groundwork for everything that follows. From here, the exploration will move deeper into the mechanisms through which insight becomes transformation, and how the architecture of perception itself can be reorganized and enhanced. My aim with this project is to build something that rises step by step into psychological territory, into philosophical territory that is rarely explored with clarity in modern media. It is a synthesis of psychology, contemplative tradition, and symbolic philosophy. Not to persuade, not to convert, but to reveal. If you found value in this exploration, you can support the work in the simplest ways available here. Subscribe if you want to follow where the inquiry goes. Like the video so it reaches others searching for deeper understanding. And if something in this discussion resonated with you, leave a comment. Dialogue sharpens perception. Either way, I appreciate you walking this far into the inquiry. Because the path we are exploring here is narrow, but it leads somewhere worth going.